Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Danielle Desautelle, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how to know whether or not a subliminal or a hypnosis is actually working for you or not. I remember at the beginning of my own personal manifestation journey, I tried out like literally everything, every single type of process or technique or permission slip. I tried it out, and a couple of those tools and techniques, or like I said, permission slips, were in fact hypnoses and subliminals, and also meditations. And just as a quick side note, I'm going to be using these tools interchangeably throughout the video, even though they're technically not the same. From my perspective, all three of these are different tools on basically accessing or changing your subconscious programming, but they do it in slightly different ways. So for example, hypnosis is usually some sort of like guided, altered state where the conscious mind is on the side, we could say, and the person or the audio suggesting or making the suggestions is directly talking, we could say, to the subconscious mind. But essentially hypnosis is just being in a highly suggestible state for your subconscious mind to accept the programming more readily. Meditation is very similar. Usually when you are in a more meditative state, you're in a more suggestible state. It's usually a practice of more conscious focus or awareness, where you're usually observing your thoughts rather than reacting or being your thoughts. But meditation is another way, or even like guided meditation is another way of calming your mind so that the suggestions or the guided meditation can more easily access your subconscious mind or that deeper level programming. And then when it comes to subliminals, these are probably the most different in the sense that they're usually audio tracks that are played below conscious hearing. And the idea is that they are penetrating your subconscious mind without your conscious awareness. And they're usually played at certain frequencies that you move your conscious mind out of the way. But the main difference with subliminals is that you're not fully aware of what's actually being said. And the idea is that it is bypassing your conscious awareness down to your subconscious mind so that it can more effectively program your subconscious mind. But despite these being different tools, they basically do the same thing. The idea is that they move your conscious mind out of the way and they program your subconscious mind. And they can be used in a variety of different ways. Some people use them to manifest certain things. Some people use them to change limiting beliefs. Some people use them to change their behaviors. And the way that I like to personally categorize all three of these different tools or techniques is I categorize them as more passive ways of activating my imagination. And yes, even with the subliminal, even though technically speaking, when you're listening to the subliminal, you don't really hear what's actually being said. The reason why I categorize them as more passive uses of your imagination is because you're not actively like using or trying to activate your imagination. You're putting on a recording and then letting your imagination follow the recording, or letting your mind follow the recording or the audio. So it's more of a passive way of persisting in the end result that you want. And another thing that I want to point out at the beginning of the video as well is, for me personally, I prefer hypnoses rather than subliminals. And we could even say maybe even like a guided meditation every now and again. But for me, when it comes to these more passive ways of activating my imagination, I prefer hypnoses over subliminals and guided meditations. In fact, I actually love to make my own hypnoses with AI. I'm actually currently working on a video on how to use AI to manifest your desires, but this is one of the ways that I like to use AI to manifest things. I like to create my own hypnoses, and I have used AI to also create a subliminal, but I've only created one. I'm not really a big fan of the work that has to go into creating a subliminal because you have to get like the right frequency. You have to, use Audacity to like speed up the affirmation, and there's a little bit more like steps involved for creating a subliminal rather than a hypnosis. But my whole point here is that I'm a hypnosis girl, but with that being said, I have tried subliminals. I've tried other people's subliminals, and I have created one of my own subliminals myself. But I'm pointing this out because one thing that I do want to be clear is when it comes to these tools that you are using, or like I said, these permission slips that you are using, something that I highly recommend is that you use the ones that you actually enjoy using. The only reason why I prefer hypnoses over subliminals is just because of the enjoyment that I get from it when I'm actively using the tool, or in this case, the hypnosis. But if you're someone who prefers a subliminal over a hypnosis, or, a guided meditation over a subliminal, or, whatever, whichever one you prefer, or maybe you even prefer all three, doesn't matter. But my whole point here is use the ones that you actually enjoy consuming, because when it comes to the tool that you are using, it's not necessarily the tool that actually manifests what you want. It's how you use the tool. And so it's important that you're consciously using what tool that you want to use and that resonates the most for you in order to actually get the results that you prefer. From my own personal perspective, we do better with the things that we personally resonate with. And so for some people, subliminals may work better for them, and for other people like myself, a hypnosis may work better for them, or they may enjoy doing a hypnosis over a subliminal or a guided meditation. Do what works for you. That's my whole point in this. Now, with all that being said, let's get into more of this, like, how do you know whether or not a subliminal or a hypnosis or a guided meditation is actually working for you or not? I know for me personally, especially earlier on in my manifestation journey, I remember trying out these like different tools like hypnoses, the subliminals and the guided meditations, thinking that they were going to somehow fix me or somehow get me to where I wanted to go. And I wouldn't say that was necessarily a bad way of thinking about things, but something that caused in me was actually a lot of resistance to these tools. And what this ended up looking like was, as I was listening to the recording, it was usually a recording. I never actually had a physical person doing a hypnosis with me, but every time I would listen to the audio, what would simultaneously be playing in my mind, like what I'd be consciously thinking as I was listening to the audio tape, was basically panic. I would be sitting there trying to calm myself down, but in the back of my mind, I would be thinking things like, is this actually working? Is it actually, penetrating my subconscious mind? Is it actually saturating my subconscious mind? How long do I have to do this for? Like, when will I know that my mind's actually like saturated? And looking back, I can see that I had like a higher level of resistance to not only the manifestations, but also even just to the tools at the time. Like, I didn't actually know how to like relax myself and let myself absorb the suggestions that were being played in the audio. And so that's another thing that I think is very important to point out when it comes to whether or not like a subliminal or an audio or something that is suggesting these new things that you want to be programming your mind with. When you go into actively consuming these more passive tools with your mind, go into it understanding that chill is the name of the game. In fact, the more chill you are, the more your subconscious mind is easily programmed. So do your best to calm yourself down and listen to the recording or listen to the tool for the sake of enjoying it. The more calm you are, the more it's going to saturate your mind. Now, when it comes to how to tell whether or not a subliminal, a hypnosis, or a guided meditation is working for you or not, in this video I'm going to be covering 5 specific ways that you can actually tell if they are working for you or not. And getting straight into it, this first one is usually the one that I notice first after I've used the tool for at least 1 to 2 days. And this first sign is usually, it's at a very, very subtle level, but something that I notice is that after listening to the tool, something that I notice is as I'm going about my day, I will notice that my thoughts and perspectives about the manifestation or about the programming change ever so slightly, and usually in a more preferred way. Now, something to keep in the back of your mind as well is when I feel called to use a hypnosis or a subliminal or a guided meditation, it's usually for the manifestations, or at least I've noticed this. I've noticed that I feel called to use these tools, these more passive tools, when it comes to the manifestations or the programming that I have a high level of resistance to. So when I'm using hypnosis or when I'm using a subliminal, it's usually because I'm usually trying to like convince myself of my manifestation because I truly don't believe of my manifestation, or I'm not really on board with this new mental programming. And just to be very clear, this is for me personally. This is when I usually feel called to use these tools. But the reason why I bring this up is because usually when I'm starting off, using a hypnosis or a meditation of sorts, when I actively start consuming them, I usually have a higher level of resistance to whatever it is that I'm manifesting or to whatever it is that I'm trying to program my mind with. And so one of the first things right off the bat is that as I'm going about my day, I just slightly notice that my resistance to the manifestation or to the programming is ever so slightly less. In other words, every time my manifestation or every time that mental programming comes into my awareness without the guided meditation or the hypnosis or the subliminal, I notice that I'm not as resistant to it anymore. And actually, the second sign that's on this list actually goes off of this first one, but I also notice that my emotional reaction to my manifestation or to this new programming also shifts. Even though it's usually small, it actually is very significant because it's actually like a sign of movement, of me shifting my perspective of what I am programming myself with. In other words, these first 2 signs that usually show up for me is that I notice that my reaction or my perspective of what I am actively programming myself with shifts in a positive way or in a preferable way. So I feel less resistant to what I am actually programming myself with in the first place. Another sign that I notice that actively tells me that my subliminal or my hypnosis or my guided meditation is actually working is usually within a couple days after I start like practicing it or using the tool, is I notice that my manifestation also, the way that I'm perceiving it, it also seems like it's more realistic. Like I could actually get on board with, you know, this new programming that I'm attempting to program myself with. As I just mentioned, usually when I gravitate towards hypnosis or guided meditations or even sometimes subliminals, it's usually because I have a high level of resistance to that programming for whatever reason. Like there's usually something in me that's like just very resistant and like adamant about, you know, my ability to change something in my physical reality, whatever that programming is. And it's not necessarily that I don't believe that I can actually like manifest it. It just, for whatever reason in that present moment, I have a high level of resistance to it. So it doesn't seem as realistic. Like it may be possible on some level, but I don't really feel like I have direct access or like I could actually do this. Like for whatever reason, like I said, there's a certain level of resistance to it. And it seems less realistic for me personally, for whatever reason. But this third sign that I personally notice is when I'm actively using this new, you know, guided meditation or hypnosis or subliminal in a consistent way, I do notice that when the idea or when the new programming pops up or when I become aware of, you know, the manifestation that I'm going for, when I'm actually thinking of it or when it consciously enters into my awareness, the way that I react to it is like, oh yeah, that actually could work for me. Even if I don't know how, my relationship to the topic does shift. And again, in a more preferable way, to the point where it actually starts to seem like a realistic thing that I could experience. When I start noticing that I'm actually having a more positive relationship to my manifestation or to the programming, that's when I know that things are starting to pick up. That's when I know that my subconscious mind is actually being programmed. I feel lighter about the topic. I feel like this topic is actually like possible for me. Like not just possible, but like, yeah, like I could actually have this thing. This seems realistic to me. Now, this fourth sign actually has to do with behavior change, and more specifically, when you are using a subliminal or a hypnosis or a guided meditation to actively change your behavior in some way. And again, when I'm using one of these more passive tools to activate my imagination or to like brainwash me into doing something new, I usually have a high level of resistance to doing the action for, again, whatever reason. But this fourth sign on how I know whether or not one of these more passive tools is actually working for me or not, or if it's actually like programming my subconscious mind, is when it comes to behavior change, I notice that changing the behavior becomes a lot easier. I either find myself automatically doing the behavior, or when I'm consciously thinking about the behavior, I actually start to crave the behavior. And at the beginning, it's usually just like a little bit of craving, like, oh, that would be kind of like fun to do the behavior. But the more I actually use the programming, or the more I use the subliminal or the hypnosis, the more I actually crave the behavior. And it's without conscious effort either. Like I'm not trying to make myself like this like new behavior. I'm not trying to like make myself even do the behavior. It's just something that I notice when the behavior or the idea of the behavior comes into my consciousness, I'm associating more pleasure with it. And when I associate more pleasure with the behavior, that's when I actually want to do the behavior. So I'll give you an example of how this showed up actually. There was one time where I wanted to change my behavior with my health. And back in the day, I actually had this like behavior of always drinking water after meals. And I consciously knew, this was kind of like the frustrating thing about it, I consciously knew that drinking water after meals made me feel really good. The best way I can describe it is the feeling that drinking water after meals made me feel was like alive. It made me feel satiated, and it also made me feel just like mentally clear. But for whatever reason, I stopped that habit, and it went on for a few years. And this didn't like necessarily affect my life too dramatically, but there was a point in my life where I was like, I actually want to get back into that habit, because for me, drinking water, it keeps my skin clear. It also makes me feel more mentally alert, and it just kind of keeps things moving as well. There's a lot of benefits for like drinking more water, but it made me think back to that habit of like when I would drink water after meals. But for whatever reason, I could not, like I didn't actually want to drink water after meals like in the moment. I had a certain level of resistance to it. And so I actually created a meditation to program myself for this behavior change. And so I actually created a hypnosis using AI to basically brainwash myself back into doing this habit. And I also incorporated some other like food habits that I wanted to do as well. But within like 2 days of listening to this hypnosis, I was automatically, without even thinking, drinking water after my meals and following the behavior changes that I wanted to do with like my food habits, which was kind of crazy for me, because before that I was actively trying to make myself like drink water after meals. But like I said, for whatever reason, I had a high level of resistance to it, even though I consciously knew it was going to make me feel better. It wasn't until I actually like played the hypnosis that I was like, oh, like this behavior change is like automatic. I found myself doing it unconsciously too. Like I would just like want water. Like I remember like after finishing a meal, I had this like craving. Instead of craving more food, I actually had this feeling of thirst. And I was like, oh, I actually want water right now. Like water would taste amazing after this meal. And so my whole point here is that one of the signs, especially when it comes to behavior change, if you are using a subliminal or if you're using a hypnosis to change your behavior, something that you will notice is that your behavior will automatically seem more pleasurable to you. And the more pleasurable it seems to you, the more you're going to crave it and actually do it because it actually feels good by your own new perception. Now, this last sign I have actually only experienced with hypnosises and guided meditations. I have not actually experienced this with subliminals. However, I have heard people actually experience this with subliminals. I think the reason why I haven't experienced it with subliminals is just because I have not used subliminals consistently or as consistently as I have hypnoses. And for the record, the sign's a little bit weird, but it has happened. It's actually happened more than once for me after I've used a hypnosis. But another sign that may show up that indicates that your subconscious mind actually is being reprogrammed is that you may start to experience some favorable dreams about the new programming or about the manifestation or whatever it is that you're using the subliminal or hypnosis or the guided meditation for. And the key word for this one is favorable. I actually have had, this was earlier on in my journey with like using hypnosis or guided meditations, these more passive tools. I did actually experience unfavorable dreams about the thing that I was programming my mind with. But when I look back at that experience, I think the reason why that happened was because I had a very high level of resistance to that manifestation or to that programming, to the point where what ended up happening was the hypnosis ended up bringing up all of that like resistance in my dream. But when you're actually using one of these more passive tools for activating your imagination, something that can eventually happen is you start to dream about your manifestation or that programming in a positive manner or in a positive light, where in that dream you're actually enjoying your manifestation or enjoying the results of the new programming. I actually had this experience with a physical appearance change that I was using hypnosis with, and I'm not going to share specifically what this body change was just because it's personal to me, but I remember I had a dream where, like, before, when I was actively using hypnosis to, you know, saturate my subconscious mind with the end result of the new physical appearance change that I was going for, I remember when I first started off the process, I had a very high level of resistance to this physical appearance change. And so every time I would think of the physical appearance change, I actually had a lot of resistance to me imagining what it would be like to actually have this physical appearance change. A lot of fears, a lot of resistance came up. It wasn't like the biggest physical appearance change, but it was significant for me. And so when I actively started programming or reprogramming my subconscious mind, it actually brought up a lot of angst and resistance. But then what ended up happening was when I kept practicing and playing the hypnosis, that new programming over and over, what ended up happening was my mind started to like chill out to the point where I remember I had my first like favorable dream. Like, I was asleep and I had this dream of like actually having my physical appearance change, and I remember actually in that dream like enjoying the physical appearance change. And I remember like waking up and being like, oh my gosh, like I think I shifted, like this is excellent, like yay, kind of thing. But my whole point here is that one of the signs that can happen that indicates, you know, subconscious acceptance or subconscious shifting is you have positive dreams about your manifestation or about that programming. And that's how you know that your subconscious mind is actively shifting and reprogramming you in a more favorable way. Now, those are 5 signs that can help you start to become more aware of where your subconscious mind is in relationship to your manifestation or in relationship to this new programming, whatever it is. But I want to end this video just leaving you with some helpful tips on how to actually utilize these more passive uses of your imagination. The first tip that I want to leave you with is chill is the name of the game. When you are actively listening to these audios or when you are consuming these new suggestions, aim for calm and aim for pleasure, which sounds a little bit weird, but when you aim for calm and you aim to like listen to the audio or the suggestion because it makes you feel better, your mind, your subconscious mind is going to more readily accept and shift its perspective in a more favorable light to whatever the programming is in the first place. So my first tip is just chill out and learn how to enjoy the programming as you're listening to it. It'll help saturate your subconscious mind a lot faster. Uh-oh, overheating. We gotta hurry this one up. And the last tip that I want to leave you with when it comes to these more passive tools of reprogramming your subconscious mind is something that I would highly recommend is consciously choosing the subconscious programming. There's so many different sources online that, you know, there are guided meditations, there's subliminals, there's, you know, hypnosises, right? And they all market the same thing, that they are going to somehow get you the results that you want to get, which is awesome. And I'm not saying that they do not work, but something that you're going to notice is that they all have a different programming within them. Like, there are a lot of weight loss hypnosises on YouTube, and they're all marketing the same result, right? Weight loss. But if you actually look at the programming, you'll notice that they're all different. Like the actual audio is different. The piece of advice that I want to give you here is look at the actual programming in that it's actually programming you with, because different programming may resonate with some people and not resonate with other people. And also, you may want to be programmed for weight loss in a different way than what's actually being, suggested to you in the audio that you've picked. There are an infinite number of ways to lose weight. There's an infinite number of ways to make money or to manifest money. There's an infinite number of ways of, manifesting your SP. If you look at the programming itself, make sure that it's the programming that you actually want to be true for you. So like, for example, if one of the ways that you associate weight loss, or this new version of you who has lost weight, if you want to be programmed as being a more active person, then pick a programming that suggests that you are a more active person. If you are someone who does not want to be a more active person but still wants to experience weight loss, then pick a different programming that maybe focuses on just like more mindset or more like perceiving food differently, or whatever. But my whole point here is that even though that this is subconscious programming, I would recommend consciously choosing that subconscious programming and make sure that it fits best for you specifically. Make sure it's actually the programming that you want to be true for you, all right? But with all that being said, I'm going to end the video here. Definitely let me know what you think about it in the comments below. As always, I love hearing everyone's different perspectives, but that's all for now. Until next time, keep creating, everyone, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.